The annual family vacation was always a tradition. We'd rent a large beach house for a week, and this year, the destination was Cancun. As I boarded the plane, I was already bracing myself for the tension. My parents had been relentless in their efforts to get me to pay off my sister Lily's debt, which had spiraled out of control from her impulsive and lavish spending. Every phone call, every text, was a new attempt to guilt me into caving. I knew this trip would be no different. The moment I arrived at the beautiful villa, the atmosphere felt heavy with unspoken expectations. My mother's smile didn't reach her eyes, and my father's demeanor was distant. Lily, meanwhile, was all charm, acting as if nothing was wrong. I was determined to enjoy the vacation, but I also knew I had a secret weapon, something I had just discovered that would change everything. Will she give in and pay the debt for the sake of peace? Or will she reveal the secret that will change their family forever? Let me know where you're watching from in the comments below, and don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button to find out what happened later in the story. I'm a financial analyst, and for as long as I can remember, I have been the responsible one in the family. It was a role assigned to me by my parents, a retired engineer and a homemaker, the moment my younger sister, Lily, was born. She was the creative one, the free spirit, the one who needed to be protected from the harsh realities of the world. I, on the other hand, was the one who was meant to handle them. The dynamic was never explicitly stated, but it was there in every decision, every conversation, every interaction. My childhood was a series of lessons on the value of a dollar. When I was 16, I decided I wanted to buy a car. I got a part-time job at a local grocery store, working after school and on weekends, saving every penny. My parents offered to match my savings, but they never did. Instead, the money I saved was used to pay for Lily's expensive art lessons and a new camera for her photography hobby. "She has a passion, Maya," my mother would say, her eyes shining with pride. "We have to nurture it." It wasn't about the money. It was about the principle of it, the constant message that her dreams were more important than mine. This dynamic continued into our college years. I worked multiple jobs to pay my way through business school. I took out loans, lived in a tiny apartment with 3 roommates, and ate a lot of instant noodles. My parents, meanwhile, paid for Lily's art school in full, her lavish apartment, and a monthly allowance so she wouldn't have to work and could focus on her art. I never complained. I just worked harder, determined to succeed on my own terms. I would call home, tired and stressed from juggling classes and work, and my mother would sigh and say, "Lily is so stressed with her art show. I hope you're not overworking yourself, Maya." It was a constant reminder that my struggles were less important than her creative pursuits. After graduation, I secured a job at a prestigious financial firm. I worked my way up, saving diligently and living below my means. I paid off my student loans in 5 years, something my parents never seemed to acknowledge. My life was about financial independence and stability. Lily's life, on the other hand, was a whirlwind of expensive trips to Bali, designer shopping sprees, and extravagant parties, all funded by credit cards. Her social media was a carefully curated facade of a glamorous lifestyle she couldn't afford. The irony was not lost on me. While I was working hard, she was posting photos of herself sipping cocktails on a beach with captions like, "Living my best life." So grateful for all the blessings. Whenever she needed money, she would go to our parents, who would either give it to her or, more often, turn to me. They expected me to bail her out, to be the family's financial safety net. "She's your sister, Maya," my mother would say, her voice thick with emotion. "Family helps family. She's not like you, Maya. She's a free spirit." It was a phrase I had heard my entire life, one that was used to justify every instance of unequal treatment. I started to withdraw from the family. I loved my parents, but the constant pressure and unequal treatment were taking a toll on my mental health. My relationship with my husband, Alex, became my safe haven. He saw the toxic dynamics of my family and supported me in setting boundaries. He helped me see that my family was using me and that it was not my responsibility to fund my sister's irresponsible lifestyle. "You are not an ATM, Maya," he would tell me. "You are not responsible for her life choices." My father, who had been an engineer, had always been a master of hiding financial truths. He would talk about investments and business opportunities that always seemed to benefit Lily and never me. I never questioned him before, but now, with a lifetime of resentment bubbling up, I was starting to. My father had always been the quiet enabler, the one who would back my mother's demands with a quiet nod and a knowing look. This time, however, was different. This time, I had a secret of my own. I had a file, a digital trail that would expose the truth. The truth was, I had discovered that my father had been siphoning money from our family's savings account for years, not for Lily's college, but for her to live a lavish lifestyle. He had opened a secret bank account in her name and had been transferring money to it for years. I had found out about this through a private investigator I had hired. I had a feeling that something was wrong, and I was right. This wasn't just favoritism, it was a betrayal. It wasn't just about the money, it was about the deceit. It was about the years of lies. I had a feeling that I was not the only one being used, and I was right. My father was using me to cover his own lies. I was going to use this information to expose my family's betrayal. I was going to use it to set myself free. I was going to use it to get my revenge. The catalyst arrived in the form of Lily's mounting credit card debt. She had racked up nearly $50,000 on cards, a result of lavish trips to Europe, designer shopping sprees, and extravagant parties. Her credit score was in the gutter, and she was getting calls from collection agencies. She had come to me, crying, begging me to help her. "I don't know what to do, Maya," she said, her voice filled with panic. "I can't tell Mom and Dad. They'll kill me." She looked at me with those big, innocent eyes, the same ones she had used to get what she wanted her entire life. I was tempted to help her. Part of me, the part that had been conditioned to be the family's savior, wanted to write her a check and make the problem disappear. But another part, the part that had been building walls and setting boundaries, said no. "I can't, Lily," I said. "I'm not going to bail you out. You need to take responsibility for your actions." She was shocked. "What? How can you say that? We're family," she cried. "I'm your sister." "Being family doesn't mean I have to fund your irresponsible lifestyle," I said, my voice firm. "You're 25 years old, Lily. You need to learn to manage your own finances." She left my office in a huff, and I knew the storm was coming. The next day, my mother called. "Maya, honey, I hear you're being difficult about Lily's debt," she said, her voice laced with disappointment. "It's a lot of money, Mom," I said. "And she got into this mess herself. She needs to learn her lesson." "But she's your sister," my mother said, "and we've always taken care of her. Now it's your turn." The conversation continued in this way for weeks, with my mother using every emotional manipulation tactic in her arsenal to get me to cave. "Is this really the hill you want to die on?" she would ask. "Is $50,000 worth losing your family over?" My father's approach was more subtle. He would call and talk about how stressed my mother was and how I was worrying them. He would say things like, "Your sister has a good heart, Maya. She just needs a little help." The pressure mounted as the family vacation approached. My mother called to remind me that it was a special time for all of us and that she hoped I wouldn't ruin it with my attitude. My father sent me an email, a long, rambling message about the importance of family and how, sometimes, you have to sacrifice for the people you love. My mother-in-law, a shrewd and manipulative woman who had always been a rival, got involved. She sent me a long email detailing all the ways I was failing as a daughter and a sister. She even included a quote from the Bible about the importance of family. I was at my breaking point. I had been planning to reveal the secret about the trust fund all along, but I had wanted to do it at the right time. That time was now. The email from my mother-in-law was the final straw. She had always been a rival, and now she was using my family's dysfunction to try to get a one-up on me. I was not going to let her. I was going to expose the truth and set myself free. The day of our flight to Cancun, my phone buzzed with a text from my father. Just landed. Your mother and Lily are already in the water having a great time. We miss you. When are you getting here? I knew he was trying to guilt me. I was flying separately from them, a small act of rebellion. I was already in a tense mood, and the text just added to it. I ignored it and put my phone on airplane mode. I needed to be in a calm state of mind before the storm. I arrived at the beach villa a few hours later. The moment I walked in, I was met with my mother's tight-lipped smile. "There you are," she said, her voice a mix of relief and thinly veiled frustration. "We were beginning to think you weren't coming." I hugged her and my father, who was standing awkwardly by the door. Lily came running up to me, her arms outstretched. She was wearing a new bikini and a designer sun hat. "Maya, you're finally here. The water is amazing. You have to come swimming with us," she said, her voice a little too cheerful. I knew she was trying to act like everything was normal. I smiled and said I would join them later. For the first 2 days, we maintained a facade of normalcy. We went to the beach, we ate at nice restaurants, and we laughed and told stories. But the tension was always there, a low hum beneath the surface. My mother would give me a look every time I ordered something that wasn't on the menu, as if to say, "You have money for this, but not for your sister." My father would bring up Lily's business every so often, a subtle hint that I should be helping her. Lily would talk about all the struggles she was going through, a not-so-subtle attempt to get sympathy. My mother-in-law, meanwhile, was on a mission. She would corner me at every opportunity, talking about how a good family member would step up and help their own. She would talk about how lucky I was to be so financially stable and how it was my moral obligation to help my sister. She was relentless. "I don't understand why you're being so selfish, Maya," she said to me one afternoon by the pool. "It's not that much money to you, but it's everything to your sister." "It's not about the money," I said. "It's about the principle. Lily needs to learn that her actions have consequences." The conversation went on, and I knew I had to act. I had planned to drop the bombshell at the family dinner, but I couldn't wait. The emotional manipulation was too much. I was going to end it. I was going to expose the truth and set myself free. I calmly excused myself from the conversation and went back to my room. I got my laptop and connected to the Wi-Fi. I went to the file I had been keeping, a meticulously documented list of all the financial transactions that had been made from my parents' accounts to Lily's. I had a lot more than just the bank statements. I had the emails, the texts, the contracts, and the receipts. I had everything. I was ready. The final evening of our family vacation was a dinner at a fancy restaurant overlooking the ocean. The atmosphere was still tense, despite the expensive food and flowing wine. My mother, my father, Lily, and my mother-in-law were all there. I was sitting across from my mother, who was giving me a look that said, "Let's not make a scene." I was not going to heed her warning. I had been pushed to my limit. "I have something to say," I said, my voice steady and clear. The table fell silent. My parents looked at me with a mix of confusion and annoyance. Lily looked at me with a look of pure panic. My mother-in-law looked at me with a smug smile, as if she knew I was about to give in. "I am not going to pay for Lily's debt," I said, "and I'm not going to apologize for it." My mother's face flushed. "Maya, we are in a public place. Let's not do this now." "No," I said. "We are going to do this now. I've been emotionally manipulated and guilt-tripped for weeks, and I am done." I opened my laptop and turned the screen toward them. "This," I said, pointing to a document on the screen, "is a detailed report of all the financial transactions that have been made from your bank accounts to Lily's over the last 7 years." My parents' eyes widened in shock. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. Lily looked at the screen and then at me, her face pale. "This is a lie," my father said, his voice a low growl. "How did you get this?" "I hired a private investigator," I said. I had a feeling something was wrong, and I was right. "This is a total invasion of our privacy," my mother said, her voice rising. "It is," I agreed. But what about my privacy, my financial stability, my life? You've been using me as a backup plan for Lily's irresponsible lifestyle for years. And you, Dad, you have been enabling her. My father looked down at his plate, unable to meet my gaze. And you, Mom, I continued, you have been emotionally manipulating me, making me feel guilty and selfish for not bailing out my sister. Then I turned to Lily. And you, I said, you knew about this. You knew about the secret trust fund. You knew about the money my father was siphoning from our family's savings. You knew about all of it, and you still came to me, begging for more money. You're not just irresponsible. You're a liar. Lily's eyes filled with tears, her go-to response when she was cornered. I needed the money, she sobbed. I needed to keep up with my friends. At my expense, I asked. At my future's expense? The slap that I thought was coming never did. Instead, my mother-in-law, who had been listening in silence, spoke up. This is a disgrace, she said, her voice dripping with venom. You should be ashamed of yourself, Maya. You have ruined this family. My father finally spoke up. No, he said, she didn't ruin this family, we did. He looked at me with a look of pure shame. I'm so sorry, Maya, he said. I am so sorry for all of it. I'm sorry for all the years of unequal treatment, for all the lies, for all the deceit. I was a coward. I didn't want to deal with the truth, so I hid it from you. I'm so sorry. My mother, on the other hand, was silent. She had nothing to say. She was just sitting there, her face a mask of shock and anger. I looked at all of them, the people who were supposed to be my family, the people who had betrayed me for years. And in that moment, I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no regret, just a profound sense of peace. I had finally exposed the truth. I had finally set myself free. The silence that followed my revelation was deafening. No one spoke. My father looked at me with a newfound respect and a profound sense of regret. My mother looked at me with a mix of shock and betrayal. Lily was crying, her shoulders shaking with sobs. My mother-in-law was furious, but she said nothing, her silence a testament to her shock. I closed my laptop and stood up. I'm going back to the villa, I said, my voice calm and steady. I have nothing else to say. As I walked back to the villa, I felt a sense of relief I hadn't felt in years. The weight of my family's dysfunction was finally off my shoulders. I was free. I got a call from my father later that night. He was crying, something I had never heard him do before. I'm so sorry, Maya, he said. I am so sorry. I should have told you. I should have stood up for you. I was a coward. I know, Dad, I said. I know. I'm going to fix this, he said. I'm going to tell your mother I'm no longer going to cover for Lily. I'm going to tell her she needs to take responsibility for her actions. My mother's reaction, when I spoke to her the next day, was different. She was angry. How could you do this to us? She demanded. You have ruined our family. You have embarrassed us in front of everyone. I didn't ruin this family, Mom, I said. You and Dad did. I just exposed the truth. She hung up on me, and I knew it would be a long time before she would speak to me again. Lily, meanwhile, was a mess. She called me, crying, begging me to help her. I don't know what to do, Maya, she sobbed. I have no money, no job, and no one is going to hire me with my credit score. You have to help me. No, Lily, I said. I don't. You need to take responsibility for your actions. This is your mess to clean up, not mine. She hung up on me, and I felt a pang of sadness. I loved my sister, but I couldn't be her crutch anymore. I had to let her fall so she could learn to stand on her own. I returned home from the vacation feeling both exhausted and exhilarated. I had finally done what I had been too afraid to do for years. I had confronted my family's dysfunction and set firm boundaries. I knew the road ahead would be difficult, but I was ready for it. I was ready to heal, to redefine my relationship with my family, and to finally live a life of my own, free from the weight of their expectations and lies. I had a long conversation with Alex, and he was so proud of me for standing up for myself. I also got a call from my mother-in-law, who surprisingly was apologetic. I'm sorry, Maya, she said. I was wrong about you. You are a strong woman. I respect you for what you did. I took a deep breath. I knew the road to reconciliation would be long and difficult, but for the first time in my life, I was hopeful. I was hopeful that I could have a real relationship with my family, one based on honesty and mutual respect, not lies and emotional manipulation. Over the next few months, I began the long and arduous process of healing and redefining my relationship with my family. I started by setting boundaries. I stopped answering my mother's angry and manipulative phone calls. I only responded to my father's texts if they were about something other than Lily. And I went to therapy, a decision that was long overdue. My therapist, Dr. Jenkins, helped me understand that I wasn't just healing from the recent events, but from a lifetime of being treated as a secondary priority. You were conditioned to be the family's savior, Dr. Jenkins explained. You were taught that your worth was tied to your ability to fix your sister's problems. It's not your fault that you feel guilty. It's a deeply ingrained pattern that you have to unlearn. The therapy sessions were difficult but liberating. I learned to acknowledge my feelings of anger and resentment, feelings I had suppressed for years. I learned that it was okay to be angry, that it was okay to feel hurt, and that it was okay to put my own needs first. My relationship with my father began to heal. He was the one who was truly remorseful. He called me regularly, not to talk about Lily's problems, but to talk about my life. He asked me about my work, my marriage, and my hobbies. He listened to me, something he had never done before. He even started going to therapy himself, a move that shocked me but also filled me with hope. "I want to be a better father," he said to me one day. "I want to be the father you deserve." I was speechless. For the first time, I felt like he truly saw me. My mother, on the other hand, was still in denial. She had cut off all communication with me. She would not return my calls or texts. She would not even speak to me on the phone when I called my father. She was still convinced that I had ruined the family. I knew she would never apologize, but I also knew that her forgiveness was not something I needed anymore. I had found my own peace, my own healing. Lily was a different story. She had hit rock bottom. She had maxed out her credit cards, and her credit score was ruined. She had no job, no money, and no one to turn to. She had finally realized that her actions had consequences. She called me one day, her voice thick with shame. "I'm sorry, Maya," she said. "I'm sorry for everything. I'm sorry for lying to you. I'm sorry for using you. I'm so sorry." "I accept your apology, Lily," I said, "but I can't help you. You have to do this on your own." I gave her the name of a financial counselor and a list of job websites. I told her I would be there for her, but only as a sister, not as a financial savior. The road ahead for Lily was long and difficult, but she was finally taking the first steps toward a healthier life. She got a part-time job at a coffee shop and started paying off her debt. She was no longer posting lavish photos on social media. She was finally living in reality. My father and I began to meet regularly for coffee. During one of our meetings, he confessed to me that he was the one who was pushing my mother and Lily to ask for my help. He admitted that he had a gambling problem and that he had used my mother's credit cards and Lily's trust fund to pay off his debts. "I was a coward, Maya," he said, his voice filled with regret. "I was afraid to tell you and your mother the truth. I was so ashamed of myself. I'm so sorry." I was shocked and hurt. I had always known that my father was a little too quiet, a little too willing to let my mother and Lily do as they pleased, but I never knew why. He had always been my rock, my safe haven. He had always been the one I could count on. Now, I found out he was the one who was the root of all the problems. "Why didn't you just tell me?" I asked, my voice filled with tears. "I could have helped you." "I know," he said, "but I was so ashamed. I was afraid you would hate me. I was afraid you would walk away from me." "I will never walk away from you, Dad," I said. "But you have to promise me that you will get help. You have to promise me that you will never do this again." He promised me he would. He went to a gambling addiction meeting, and he was doing better. He had even started working with a financial planner to pay back all the money he had stolen. I was so proud of him. He was finally taking responsibility for his actions. He was finally being the father I always knew he could be. My mother was still not speaking to me, but she was talking to my father. He told me that she was slowly starting to understand the situation. She was slowly starting to see that her actions had consequences, and she was slowly starting to see that I was not the one who had ruined the family. Lily, meanwhile, was doing better. She was still struggling, but she was working hard to get back on her feet. She had even started a small business, selling her art online. She was no longer relying on others to help her. She was finally doing it on her own. I was so proud of her. The family was still in a difficult place, but we were on the road to recovery. We were on the road to healing. We were on the road to a new, healthier future. The holiday season was upon us, and for the first time in years, I was not dreading it. I was not going to my parents' house for Thanksgiving. Instead, I was having dinner with my husband's family, a warm, boisterous group who welcomed me with open arms. I had a wonderful time. There were no emotional manipulations, no subtle hints, no passive-aggressive comments, just laughter, love, and good food. I was finally living in a new reality, one where I was in control of my own life. I had set my boundaries, and I was holding them. I had confronted my family's dysfunction, and I was not backing down. I had found my voice, and I was not afraid to use it. The journey was not over, of course. My relationship with my family was still a work in progress. My mother was still not speaking to me, but I knew she would come around eventually. My father was still in recovery, but he was doing well. And Lily was still struggling, but she was on the right path. I knew that the road to reconciliation would be long and difficult, but for the first time in my life, I was hopeful. I was hopeful that my family could one day be whole again, not a family based on lies and manipulation, but a family based on honesty and mutual respect. The family betrayal had been painful, but it had also been liberating. It had forced me to confront my own demons, to set my own boundaries, and to find my own voice. It had taught me that loving my family didn't mean accepting their toxic behavior. It had taught me that I was worthy of love and respect, and that I didn't need to earn it by sacrificing my own well-being. The past may have been painful, but the future was bright. I was no longer a victim. I was a survivor. I was a fighter. I was free. Have you ever experienced a similar situation and felt the need to take a step back and protect your own well-being from a difficult family dynamic? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story touched something in you, make sure to subscribe and share this story with someone who needs to hear that sometimes. The hardest decisions are the ones that lead to the greatest freedom.